This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
Let's welcome in our guy, Tom Murphy, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, and Whole Hog Sports. Tom, let's start with DVH. We asked you the question last week. Hey, man, what are the odds of him winning this thing? Well, announced yesterday he did. What are some of the key reasons that you think he was able to get the award this year?
Well, when you share the SEC championship and you have the injury fate that Arkansas did, you pulled the right strings. You've done the right things. You filled in with the right guys. And I'm looking over this all-SEC team, and you got 4 Florida guys and 3 LSU guys on the first team. And for Arkansas, you got Hagen Smith. So they did more with not as much, top line, so to speak, talent. Now, look, I understand if Josenberger stayed healthy, if Wagner had stayed healthy, then there's a chance Arkansas gets another outfielder on this team or gets a outfielder on the first team. But as it is, because those guys were part of the injury story for Arkansas this year, they won despite the pitching and the outfield injuries, and that's why Dave Van Horn's up there, because he did a masterful job.
Tom, you look at what Arkansas has been in conference play. Second in ERA, number 1 in fielding and least amount of errors, number 1 in saves, second in runs allowed, number 1 in doubles allowed, and number 1 in double plays. Of those stats, and you mentioned the injuries, what's most impressive about what this team has been throughout the SEC?
Well, all those stats are impressive to me, but obviously the defensive stat is one that Dave Van Horn puts a whole lot of emphasis on, and turning double plays is a huge deal. My Braves grounded into a ton of them last night against the Dodgers. But anyway, that plays well. I mean, when you get 2 outs with 1 ground ball or a sharp liner somewhere, you know how that can change an inning. So even though their overall statistics, their batting average, their home runs, all that kind of stuff, just kind of middle of the pack in the SEC, in conference play, they improved. They got better, and, I know that the final series of the year was a little bit deflating because of the Game 2 loss, but when you look at the season as a whole, it's been an incredible run with a dinged-up roster, and, now they're about as healthy as they can be heading into the postseason.
Considering how things went the last 2 games in Nashville, what's your expectation for this week? What do you hope to see out of the Razorbacks? I think few, if any, fans think they should play all the way to Sunday and win this thing. I don't think you're in that camp. But what do you think needs to get accomplished this week in Hoover for this team?
Well, I think the first thing. Well, there's a couple of things I think are very important. One is to try to get Wagner and Josenberger and Borfin, 3 guys that have been, carried you at different points of the year, kind of get their strokes back. Borfin's in a horrible slump. I mean, he had a home run against Vandy and I think a home run the previous weekend, but otherwise there's been a lot of swinging early in counts, swinging at pitchers' pitches and things like that. And then obviously Wagner and Josenberger had been off for so long that you can just tell their timing's a little off. Even though Wagner smoked some balls, he hasn't come back at the level that he was producing when he got hurt. So that's one thing. And then the second thing is to not overwork any of your pitchers. It's to make sure Hagen Smith and Will McIntyre and Hunter Holland and Brady Tigert pitch on, the counts that they're supposed to get ready for next weekend and basically be used in the order that you want them to, even though you don't know your opponent in the first round of the regional, because this tournament's starting a little bit earlier. I don't think they push Hagen Smith up to, start a day early for the second week in a row. I think they keep him more on his normal rest, and the same thing with Holland. It may be that if Arkansas gets eliminated early, Holland isn't available to pitch, because you don't want to rush him back in. So to me, those things are more important than winning games, because I think they're set up as a regional host already and probably a top 8 seed. So as much as fans want to win, and every time we ask Dave Van Horn this pretty much every year, how couldn't your pitching be affected if you go deep into this tournament? And his response is, we want to win. So you want to win each game that you play. And so what does that add up to? Well, you could be there all weekend. I don't think that's the best scenario for Arkansas's pitching, but it's not like you try to lose a game. So it's a weird quandary. And last year it worked out pretty good for them. I mean, last year not winning in Hoover might have cost them a host seed. Their RPI was already the writing on the wall, but not winning in Hoover didn't help. And then they managed to, make the best of it. But right now, I think the writing's on the wall that they are a regional seed, and I would get my pitching straight first.
Depending on how the games went, if they lost to Tennessee and got over there and played maybe South Carolina or Georgia. Georgia's been hot. They got to play South Carolina this morning here, and about an hour and a half. Then that team gets LSU. If you go 0-2 or 1-2 down there, and you get your starters a couple of innings and kind of set things up like you said, and if you lost some games 9-8 and 7-6 or something like that, and you were out of there and didn't even play Friday, I'd be okay with that. You don't want to go down there and get smoked, and you don't want to think your confidence is chipped, because I know the way those games ended in Nashville left a bitter taste, at least in the fans' mouths. With the collapse in the eighth the night before, the balks in the third game. I mean, you need to get a little bit of your swagger back, but I'm with you. Hanging out for the weekend isn't exactly in my plans either.
It's a delicate balance, right? Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I agree with you that them getting their swagger, their momentum, whatever you want to call it, and they fought back and they retook the lead. They had the lead, lost the lead, retook the lead in the Saturday game after the really deflating. I mean, there's two losses this year that are so deflating. They're like, the Georgia game that you're leading by 4 runs entering the ninth, and then the Vanderbilt game where you're leading by 6 runs entering the eighth. Yeah, I mean, if you get either one of those two, you're the sole champion, you're the number 1 seed. But you know what? It just doesn't matter. And they can always point to last year. If they say go 1-2 or 0-2 in Hoover, they can point to last year and say, look, last year we lost the home series of Vandy, lost the road series of Bama, lost to Bama again in the tournament, and yet we picked it back up and did what we had to do to make Omaha. So you've got that example right there on the table. But I'm like you, though. I would want to see a little bit reclaimed swagger, not blowing a late lead or something like that along the way, but just not play till Sunday. I don't know if their pitching would hold up. And honestly, I think guys like Ben Bybee and Christian Fouch and Parker Coyle, all those guys, I think you want them to pitch some in this regional just to give them a taste of the postseason and not to overextend any of your mainline guys. So I think that's going to happen.
Tom, I think I asked you this last week. Like, you're confident in 5 guys, and you're waiting on that 6. Morris has had 2 stellar back-to-back outings. Might have been 3 in a row, if I remember that right, with 3 good innings in those. Has he put himself back into the good graces of the coaching staff where they feel confident to put him in any situation?
I think he has. I think it's 3 outings in a row, and the total innings are somewhere around 6 or 7 that are scoreless. And you could just tell there was a little bit more zip on his fastball the other day. I mean, he pitched very well. So, yeah, he's a key part of this. And he's one of those guys where you're like, how can we use him 2 times on this weekend? That kind of thing. And I don't mean this weekend or this week, but maybe next weekend. And honestly, Will McIntyre's kind of reemergence as a reliever and a long guy, that's a huge deal for Arkansas when you get into a postseason series. So I think you got 2 veteran guys who you're scheming for ways to get those guys in twice, and then you just fill in, with Gage Wood. You don't have to use them as long, maybe, and the rest of the relievers you just kind of fill in as needed.
Tom, I asked Dave after last season when it came to a conclusion on the recruiting side of things. I said, when 2 opponents in your not just league but division win back-to-back national championships, what does it do? Do you think Dave's a guy that's motivated by teams in his own division winning the last 2 national championships? Does that add to his already coaching just persona and his drive?
Well, we know he's a fiery competitor, and I do believe that the strength of the division, the fact that a team that had a decent history in baseball, Ole Miss, rises up, and neither Ole Miss nor Mississippi State had won it before. I do believe that's a little bit more fuel, because if you go back over 10 or 15 years, Arkansas has been a superior program to those two. I mean, marginally, but in my view, the last 10 or 12 years, Arkansas has had more success. I mean, there's certainly more trips to Omaha, but those two both kind of had a breakthrough season where Arkansas's opportunity was 18 and it didn't happen, and I think that still motivates Dave Van Horn too.
Yeah, talking about motivating, you mentioned Florida and LSU dominating the first team selections for the players. You think that's motivating some of these guys to say, wait, I belong on that list? You think that's an angle that maybe or button that Dave and his staff are pushing a little bit as we head into the postseason?
I'm not sure if that's that specific is something that they harp on, but the players obviously know. And Jace Borfin had a chance to make all conference. All three of the outfielders were on having great seasons. Borfin was up over 400. Just 6-7 weeks ago. So I like that Kendall Diggs made it. The kid Hunter Hines from Mississippi State was the first team DH. He had some big power numbers. I mean, big home run numbers. But I'm glad Diggs is on that team. He was a second team DH. But yeah, I mean, right now I think Arkansas is in a pretty good position. That they feel like they're going to be able to host. They've gotten guys back here in the last 3 weeks of the regular season, 4 weeks, I guess, if you count Tigert, and they're going to be at the best strength they could possibly be, generally speaking. And I think just getting their mojo back and getting their pitching aligned and kind of having some of their key hitters get back in the groove are the goals for this weekend. And if wins result from that, then so be it.
Hey, I want to shift gears just for a minute before we go and ask some football questions. Football team very active, as we know, in the portal, particularly the defensive side of the ball. And from everything we've read here lately, Quincey McAdoo's recovery from the automobile accident on May the 1st, what we've learned as times went on, Tom, it doesn't sound hopeful that he'll be ready for camp and maybe not even the season this year. I don't know if some of these moves recently have been to replace that, but what are you hearing about Quincey? Because I think everything we've read and learned, it's certainly not one of these situations where we're expecting to see him in August or September.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't heard a whole lot further other than, some vertebrae situation and, just don't know. You equate it to Raleigh Williams, I guess, and I don't know if they're the exact injury or similar or what, but, Raleigh had some surgery that got him ready to play again until that fateful moment in the spring game. So I don't think it's out of the question. And from family members, you can see that the recovery has been, up and walking and things like that are good news. But there's a huge difference between that and being able to play football. But the number of players Arkansas has added through the portal was, it was needed. They needed more defensive tackles, and they've gotten some. They needed more DBs, and they've gotten some. Now, will these guys fit in the locker room? Will they pick up the system? Will they be impactful on game days? That's all to be determined, but they certainly needed the numbers. And I tell you, locker rooms with that big of a roster number, the locker room balance is a big deal. And when you're adding guys who could take people's positions on the depth chart, they try to frame it up the best they can, team first and all that. But, players and their families, everybody has their own opinions about how much their son should be playing and so on. And it's a delicate deal. But I do feel like the long and short of it is they needed the numbers to stack for their depth chart. And if a decent percentage of these guys can be impactful players, as we've seen in the portal age, and it's a very short age, but they've added a lot of guys that have helped them. You think of the Drew Sanders and the Jordan Dominics. Where would they have been last year without those guys' sacks? So they've done a good job, and I don't doubt that some of the players will make the two deep and will be meaningful additions.
Tom, great conversation as always. We'll do it again Thursday, and I guess win or lose, we'll talk about a Razorback game on Thursday when you join us next.
Yes, we will. We can hatch it up some more then. Thanks, guys.
BetOnline.ag is your number one source for all your basketball info, stats, news, and scores. Get the latest odds and lines, including the latest player reports for this year's pro basketball playoffs. BetOnline is always your sports information headquarters this season, as we have you covered for all your sports wagering needs. Basketball, MLB, NHL hockey, right down to UFC and boxing. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to get your betting info, including live betting options and your favorite casino and card games you can play right from your home. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to get in on the action. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV. BLEAV. Bet online, where the game starts.